eyes may be able to see, but without a heart, you cannot feel.
What's up, everybody? This is Joyce Yossi Samuels, and you are tuning in to episode 79 of the It Will Come Show. And today, in sunny Singapore, although it is raining at the moment, it is Monday Motivation. So today I'm actually going to be talking about mental health, something I'm not actually used to talking much about, and why it's okay to not be okay. So let's dive straight in. Okay, so there's a lot going on in the world right now. So if you're tuning in for the first time to this show, I am live streaming, of course, in lockdown, straight from my bedroom, as many are at the moment in terms of where they're spending most of their time. And I've noticed a few articles that actually touch on, as you can read here, right? This title, Suicide Experts Warn of Pandemic's Impact on Mental Health, with Hong Kong's jobless, poor, and elderly most at risk. And this is not, this is not just related to Hong Kong, right? This is relating to many people around the world right now, because with the sort of joblessness taking place right now, there are a lot of people who can't cope in general. And so add in the financial economic pressures, it's going to be not interesting, but it is going to be, I would say, devastating for some, and this is something that I guess we do need to talk about, because there's a lot going on right now that is not normal, right? That a lot of us are not used to before. And it's the first time, I think, in human history whereby we've experienced something like this in this type of manner that didn't actually involve like a physical war between nations. If you think about it. So economic social effects of COVID-19 could lead to more suicides than during SARS. Losing a job, severe money problems among top suicide risk factors, expert group says. If you're watching this and you know someone who's been through a suicide, and this is a difficult conversation, you know that this is not something to be taken lightly, right? So right now, I know there's a lot of people sort of dealing with the situation in their own ways. As an entrepreneur, we're always looking on the bright side. We're always being quite optimistic about everything. But I think we have to be very practical about the realities of the situation. Because, this episode is also about me sharing with you some of the things that I didn't even realize that I was dealing with in the background. And, in terms of those realizations, it's really around, feelings of guilt, of maybe not doing enough, not feeling like I'm being productive enough during this time, feelings of, I guess not being okay, but telling myself that I am okay, that I'm still blessed and lucky to have income, right? Because I know directly people who are losing their jobs or have already lost their jobs. And, to be okay with that. And that's a big thing for me, because usually I'm very used to just getting on with stuff, right? It's, as I mentioned, for a lot of entrepreneurs, like, we are problem solvers. We look at ways to get shit done, keep going, stay optimistic constantly. So if we take a look at this next article, troops urged to seek help as use of mental health services hits all-time low. Now, this is really interesting, right? So Canada's top military officers urging troops to reach out for help if it's required, as the use of mental health services for military personnel has reached an all-time low. Now, what this could mean, and let's have a read through, right? In an open letter, use of helplines and access to mental health professionals is an all-time low. There may be some valid reasons for this, but I would like to encourage anyone who needs to reach out or access mental health therapy to do so. The decline of use of mental health services by military personnel contrasts with reports of a surge in demand at civilian crisis centers and other mental health organizations, with some reporting up to 50% more calls from Canadians in distress. So this is in Canada. The Canadian Mental Health Association reported this month that one of its branches in Nova Scotia, which usually fields 25 daily calls, was now getting more than 700 calls per day. It wasn't immediately clear why troops are no longer calling the military's helplines or seeking support. Now, with this, it could be that these troops might be dealing with stuff in their own way, personally or with family, or potentially, actually calling the civilian call centers. Um, for me, I mean, I'm not in the military, but I know that for myself, it is difficult to ask for help. I have, I guess, only up until this weekend did I really acknowledge the fact that I have issues with this. Whether it's to do with stuff around control or stuff around um, feeling weak. I mean, I think that's probably a big one. For a lot of us guys, you definitely feel weak when asking for help. And it's very subconscious because I know intellectually that it doesn't make you weak, but subconsciously, that's the feeling. Um, so often I would not really consider reaching out for help, whether it be, calling a counselor or something of the sort, because I would think that, having loved ones and the people around you should be enough, right? And, you keep yourself busy, you keep going because that is a way of not having to deal with this stuff, right? And so those sort of feelings definitely play through this. So I can imagine that the reason why maybe these call centers are not, or at least for the military, might not be getting a lot, uh, or for these valid reasons, right? Like we're especially in places like the military, just may not feel like it might be deemed as weak if you are calling. And these are our own issues, and it might be also part of the culture programming. So during this time, I think everything is coming out and up for reevaluation as to the old ways of working, right? Both in a professional sense and the things that we did for ourselves, are they still working? Are the old ways of working still working? And if not, is it time for us to actually do something about it? So, I mean, this was also sparked recently in an episode from our Fireside podcast. So, if you are tuning in for the first time again, the show is sponsored by Fire. They deal with uh, building communities for brands and also integrating new tools or technologies. And so, in the Fireside podcast with Adam Bokit, he interviewed um, he interviewed a guest, Dr. Robin Stokes, apologies, around evolutionary AI, robotics, and growth mindset. And with the growth mindset, they were talking about mental wellness as well, mental health. And I know Adam, who works for us at FIA, he's a huge advocate for mental health. And it's actually really good that we have that actually on the team because it's very easy to just be so focused on productivity all the time and trying to get things done without actually taking a step back and acknowledging mental, emotional, spiritual health, health and well-being from all aspects. And, this reminded me too of an episode I did a long time ago for the It Will Come show, which is what you're watching now. And this one was about the importance of being you, right? And I remember, so this was 2016, as you can see here, February 29th, 2016. This episode I did as a reminder to myself around the importance of being you in a culture or society whereby, there's a lot of fear around being criticized, judged, etc. This can also add to people's ability to not seek help or call out for assistance when and where needed. So, along with sort of looking at your own mental health, and again, I'm gonna emphasize the fact that this is not a topic that I'm used to talking about much, and not to say that it's not important. It's just not something that I've labeled or considered to be, I guess, important in my reality, and it's really taken certain people to actually make me realize that it's okay to talk about these things, especially for guys. We don't really talk much about these things. I'm not saying all, but just many of us. And again, this is to do with cultural programming and just how we've been brought up in a society. So I think, if there's any lesson that has come out of this, right, it's that, being vulnerable doesn't make us weak. It can make us strong as well, because at least we're acknowledging sort of some of the gaps or the shadow sides of ourselves that we might have just suppressed or ignored. And so right now, I'm sharing this because it's also part of me being able to acknowledge, right, that, even over the last couple weeks, months, since this stuff has started, I've just been in a sort of go mode because I see the opportunities, right, as an entrepreneur. But at the same time, our sort of time schedules have just been out of whack all over the place. Because everybody's working from home, people are working sort of like nonstop hours, weird hours of the day. Routines are also out of whack. And so we really need to get ourselves into a routine that works for a remote work life, and where we can actually deal with sort of the bombardment, right, of news and information around what's happening in the world. Nature is doing her thing. I really do see what's happening right now, despite the economic sort of impact of everything. It's giving nature some time to rest, and it's also telling us that it is a time to rest, right? Because we're just being forced, right? I feel like there are some karmic things in general that's hitting us collectively because of decisions we made in the past, and that's okay. We're going to see, of course, many countries start to reopen their economies for business to allow people to start getting out again. I think that'll be great, but the world definitely won't be the same, and I think this is a good thing. But it's important that we take the lessons from the past, right, and don't just repeat the same mistakes moving forward. And so, with that, if you are somebody right now who's feeling similar, who's realized that they've had issues with not being okay, but still saying everything's okay, maybe start to just say it out loud to yourself. It took me to say it out loud to myself to realize that, like, shit, okay, maybe I'm not okay. Maybe it is okay to say that and to ask for help. And I just want to give a shout out and thanks to all the people who have asked me this question over the years. There are a few individuals who have known sort of my own patterns and tendencies, right, to just sort of do these sprints and then just burn out. It's not sustainable. I acknowledge this at this point in my life, that it really is not sustainable. And if we want to do better, we need to acknowledge this and work with it. Right? And so on that note, as always, remember, through patience and persistence, it will come. And one final thing. If you are needing help, right, I ain't no professional, but of course there are many call centers out there for people who do need to have someone to talk to. I'm a big fan of actually building out proper support networks and communities. This is why I'm a big advocate for them, because I think they can also provide some healing and help you deal with these things without necessarily needing to go and pay for services. Now, I'll actually admit that this is part of actually what prevented me from going and seeking help, is because I felt like there was a bit of disconnect in terms of the personal connection or relationship you can have with someone, and it being limited in terms of discussions by money. So my past experience is, you go for counseling and you pay for an hour, and then at the hour you get stopped, right? And whereas with a friend or family or community, like, you just go until you feel like it's out of your system. So with that, though, I will say that there is a benefit, though, if you can connect with the right counselor who you feel like you can connect properly with. Don't discount it completely like I did, and don't be afraid to ask for that help. So again, I'll reiterate, through patience and persistence, it will come.
The eyes may be able to see, but without a heart, you cannot feel.